I feel that Tyson Fury, at this stage of his career, he's been doing this for 15 years, I feel he's in decline. Not drastically, but he's not what he was a few years ago.
Colin, you must have covered more heavyweight world title fights than I've had haircuts. Can you put a number on it? I
can, but I won't put a precise number on it, but I was going through the record very recently. I have been ringside at more than 80 World Heavyweight Championships. The first one I ever saw was Cooper and Muhammad Ali at Highbury in 1966.
Not a bad start.
Yeah, but it was even better. The first one I ever covered in America was the fight of the century. It was Monday, March the 8th, 1971, imprinted on my brain. About 20 minutes before the main event, suddenly there was a burst of tremendous applause and the whole arena stood up. Well, sitting at ringside, I couldn't see what it was about. I said, what's going on? Joe Louis, the great Joe Louis, had entered the arena and was walking to his seat at ringside, and the whole arena stood in homage to this one of the greatest heavyweights who ever lived. The fight itself was memorable enough. It was also the first time two unbeaten heavyweights had fought for the heavyweight championship of the world. Ali, as you know, had come off 3 years of exile. He had two fights leading up to that one with the first fight with Frazier. He'd beaten Jerry Quarry on cuts in Atlanta, and then he knocked out Oscar Bonavena at the Garden. And that was all the preparation he had. And so he was at a great disadvantage. But nevertheless, he was still Muhammad Ali, the greatest. It was a tremendous fight, and not the best heavyweight fight I'd seen, but at that time it was, because it was the first one I'd seen in America. Anyway, it went 15 rounds, as you know, and within seconds of the final bell, Frazier hit Ali on the chin with a left hook that would have knocked out a horse. But Ali had an incredible chin. He hit the deck, he rolled over and stood up before the count got to 5. And Bundini Brown, in his corner, had a wet sponge and he threw water over him as he was standing in a neutral corner, having been counted the 8 count by Arthur McCanty, the referee, to try and revive him. Anyway, he survived the 15 rounds, and it was close, but Frazier definitely won on all, I think it was on all 3 cards. And it was one of those great occasions which you never forget.
Promoters and fighters now talk about these huge fights that are going to have huge audiences. I think I'm right in saying that it's believed that was seen by 1 billion people on television screens back then because of how huge it was.
Well, I think the total audience was only 300 million because there was no pay-per-view. The fights weren't beamed around the world that they are today, so it was really in America only. But of course the BBC had a film of the fight shown later, but it was it was a great occasion.
The settings and the atmosphere are going to be very different to the next undisputed fight we have coming up with Tyson Fury and Alexander Usyk. I think because those two guys are so different, one's 6'9", 20 stone, brash, loud, used to be a tip-tap jab mover, and now he looks like he can throw a decent punch. Usyk, an amateur middleweight, a cruiserweight, 6'2", 3", quiet man. Because they're so different, I think we will really know who is definitely the undisputed heavyweight champion of the world. Would you concur with that?
Well, logically, and unfortunately you can't work any sport out by using logic, particularly boxing, because one punch can finish everything, even though you're miles behind on points. But logically, a man of 6'9", 6 inches taller than his opponent, and probably at least 4 or 5 stone heavier, is not going to lose. It's the old adage, good big uns beat good little uns. But, as I said, you can't work boxing out by logic. I feel that Tyson Fury, at this stage of his career, he's been doing this for 15 years, I feel he's in decline. Not drastically, but he's not what he was a few years ago. And I think those 3 fights with Wilder, 3 really brutal fights, might now be catching up with him. Usyk, by comparison, has had a relatively easy ride, if you like, going through. I mean, all right, he's the most, shall we say, dangerous opponent he met was Joshua. And of course, he handled Joshua, particularly in London, magnificently, completely outboxed him. Although Joshua's tactics and the advice he was getting from his corner that night was definitely suspect. But nevertheless, technically, he is a superb boxer and he's got a great brain. And I just think that because Fury isn't quite what he used to be, Usyk is capable of outsmarting him over the 12 rounds and win a points decision.
Because the atmosphere is so different, it's incredibly quiet. Even if they do get thousands of people in, do you think the fact that Fury has had these huge Vegas nights where he's had the crowd in the palm of his hand and he's a showman and he wants to sing and entertain, whereas Usyk would have done 350 fights as an amateur all around the world in silent halls, and also when he ripped apart the cruiserweight division, he was the away fighter almost every single time in the backyard with no fans. Do you think that helps Usyk?
Well, quite likely, but you've got an advantage over me, Wally. You've covered fights in Saudi, and I haven't.
It's not much of an advantage, Colin. Well, I'd rather have your CV than mine.
The point is, from what I gather, watching it on TV, you know, usually at a meaningful World Heavyweight Championship fight, for everybody who's there's an adrenaline rush. The hairs stand out on the back of your head. I don't get that feeling watching it on television that the build-up is that exciting. Because let's be honest about it, how many in that crowd, I don't know whether they've got a crowd of what, 20 or 30,000 people, how many of them are boxing fans, real boxing fans, steeped in the sport, know what they're watching, understand what they're watching. They're not, they're there for the event, they're not steeped in boxing. And I think that obviously has something to do with an atmosphere. If that fight was in Vegas, London, New York, I think there would be that tension to see who is going to be the undisputed champion. The first time for 25 years we've had an undisputed champion. So yes, I think probably Usyk benefits from the fact that it's not as tense as it could be in the build-up.
We did a little interview the other day with Lennox Lewis, and we put to him the fact that Sky Sports have been running some footage where Manny Stewart, 15 years ago, I think roughly, he tipped Tyson to be the next superstar of the heavyweight division that takes over from Klitschko. And although he did a camp there, I think, and train with him, Manny wouldn't train him because he had Klitschko. We asked Lennox, because again, he was another disciple of Manny at the Kronk, did you believe Manny or understand why he fancied Tyson back then? Did you see what he saw? He said, if I'm honest, no. He said Manny's ability to spot talent early was incredible. Yeah. It's why he had the stable that he did. Did you ever see this? I mean, Tyson was most famous for crazy comments and he uppercutted himself once. Have you been surprised by what we've seen from Tyson Fury, or did you always have a Manny Stewart-like ability?
I'm very surprised for how he developed, because he fought McDermott, John McDermott.
Should have lost.
And I wasn't at ringside. He wasn't big enough for me to be at ringside.
Yeah.
I'm only, when I say that, I'm being facetious. I watched it on television.
Yeah.
And from what I saw on television, McDermott won the fight and didn't get a decision. And the way Fury has developed from there has been remarkable.
Yeah.
And he ended up being the best heavyweight in the world. But he always had a boxing brain. He comes from a fighting family, so it's in his blood. So, yes, the fact that he reached that level did surprise me, particularly after seeing him in fight McDermott. But, you know, I don't want to put Manny Stewart down because one of the greatest trainers of all time, but he wasn't the only one who knew that Tyson was going to be future heavyweight champion of the world. Mickey Duff, he was arguably the British promoter, arguably the greatest matchmaker there's ever been, told me when Tyson had about 4 or 5 fights, there's this kid in America who will be a heavyweight champion of the world, because he was with Cus D'Amato in those days, and Duff was a friend of Jim Jacobs, one of Tyson's managers, and Mickey made all Tyson's early fights.
Really?
Oh yeah, yeah. Jacobs got him because they shared an apartment in New York on the east side. On the east side, and Mickey told me years before I saw Tyson that this kid was going to be, and that's why I went to see him before he won the title. I persuaded my sports editor to let me go and write about this fella. So, Manny knew, and so did a lot of other people.